5 years. That's how long it had been since Elijah Moore had heard anything from his old classmates. Back in high school, they called him the odd one, out a shy black boy withdrawn, buried in books drifting down the halls like a ghost no one wanted to meet. He wore old sneakers, an oversized hoodie, and silence like a suit of armor. To them, he was nothing but a punchline. So on a rainy evening when a pale white envelope slid through the mail slot, Elijah almost didn't bother. He found it tucked beneath a stack of unpaid bills, the handwriting on the front trying to look elegant. Inside was a single card gleaming with bold letters, Rutherford Academy Class of 2018 Reunion. You're invited. Elijah's thumb traced the folded edge. For a moment, memories rushed back sharper than glass, the gleaming lockers that had never felt like they belonged to him, the echoing laughter that always mocked him, the whispers, weird, too quiet, won't last a year in the real world. He'd heard it all. Back then, those words burned. Now they hardly hurt at all. He should have thrown the envelope away. He should have let it rot with the junk mail. But instead, a faint smile lifted the corner of his mouth. Because Elijah knew what they didn't. 5 years had passed since the boy they mocked walked out of those doors. 5 years of coding without rest, of rejected ideas and battles no one saw. They thought they were inviting that same loser back for one more laugh. But Elijah Moore wasn't that boy anymore, and if they wanted a show, he was ready to give them one. The card sat for hours on Elijah's chipped kitchen table, its edge catching the dim light of the apartment. He stared at it not with fear, but with a strange calm. Because behind those printed words lay the place that had once broken him the Rutherford Banquet Hall. That same private school where wealth strutted in designer blazers, where every hallway reminded him he didn't belong. He remembered everything. The squeak of sneakers on polished floors, rows of lockers painted blinding white, a whole sea of crisply pressed uniforms where he stood out as the only black student. Teachers praised his grades, called him brilliant, but brilliance never shielded him from the whispers. Weird kid. Too quiet. Too shy. He'll never survive out there. Back then, those words burrowed deep. They cut into his chest every time he passed a group snickering behind cupped hands. They made him hunch his shoulders, clutch his books tighter, and disappear into corners. But the years had changed something. The pain from their mockery had cooled like an old scar no longer tender to the touch. Still the memory remained. It reminded him who he had been and how far he had come. Elijah reached for the envelope again, sliding it between his fingers. He should have tossed it in the trash. He should have spared himself the charade. Yet a faint smile tugged at his lips. Because he knew what they didn't. 5 years had turned whispers into fuel, loneliness into discipline, rejection into springboard. The boy they thought would vanish had built something none of them could imagine. And soon every arrogant smile would go out when they recognized the truth standing right in front of them. 5 years. Only that. But to Elijah Moore, those years stretched like a lifetime. When he left Rutherford Academy, he walked away with nothing but a cracked laptop, a head full of ideas, and the sting of every insult still ringing in his ears. The world didn't welcome him with open arms. It slammed doors in his face. Investors laughed. Companies sent rejection letters colder than winter air. Nights blurred into mornings as he coded in a tiny one-bedroom apartment fueled by instant noodles and sheer stubbornness. Each failure piled higher, but Elijah didn't quit. He couldn't. What they called odd became hours of relentless focus. What they mocked as silence became patience. Gradually, the rejections turned into progress. A prototype here, a breakthrough there. Then came the first contract, the first paycheck that didn't vanish into overdue bills. By the third year, Elijah's name began to circulate on tech forums, discussed like a rumor. By the fifth, his company Orion Technologies had raised millions building systems powerful enough to catch the eyes of Silicon Valley's giants. And yet no one at Rutherford knew. He kept it that way. His reflection in the crooked mirror told a different story, tired eyes stretched, hoodie sleeves, sneakers worn down by years of use. Nothing about him screamed success. And that was exactly what he wanted. Because if those old classmates thought they were inviting the very boy they had mocked, then let them think so. Let them laugh. Let them sharpen their cruelty. He wasn't walking into that banquet as prey anymore. He was walking in like a storm they had never seen. The reunion night was draped in rain. Droplets clung to Elijah's hoodie as he pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Rutherford banquet hall. Inside, the air reeked of lemon polish and the chill from overworked vents. Gold balloons arched over a folding table scattered with neatly printed name tags, each one a relic of their shared past. He found his Elijah Moore looped in ink on a flimsy square. Pinning it to his worn hoodie, he felt the pin catch on a loose thread. That small snag seemed to recall the way he had always fit here awkwardly, never smoothly. Heads turned, not abruptly, but like ripples across water. A murmur spread from the bar to the photo booth. Someone near a pillar whispered, "Hey, is that him?" Another voice chuckled. "Same hoodie vibe." "Told you he hasn't changed." A third voice almost pitying. "Heard he's stacking shelves somewhere." Then laughter soft but sharp enough to cut. Elijah kept walking. The carpet swallowed his steps as if the hall itself wanted to hush him away. On stage, a slideshow flickered with high school photos, lacrosse jerseys, prom snapshots, science fair ribbons. The MC Tyler Voss tapped the mic with polished confidence, flashing cufflinks as if they were medals. Elijah slipped into a table at the back half in shadow, a glass of water set before him. He sat there, calm-faced, scanning the room like a chess player studying the board before the game begins. They thought tonight would be their show, their chance to turn him into a joke one more time. But what they didn't realize was that Elijah had already written the ending. From the darkness of his table, Elijah listened. Voices drifted across the banquet hall like thin smoke curling impossible to ignore. 5 years, and he's still the same, a girl whispered behind him, her tone dripping with fake pity. Another laughed softly. Tyler invited him. Said it would be fun. A full-circle comedy. A third voice added, "Relax, it's just a joke. He's probably crashing at his aunt's again." Elijah took a sip of water, setting the glass down with deliberate calm. The rim left a faint ring of condensation, which he wiped with one slow pass of his sleeve. To anyone else, it meant nothing. To him, it was control choosing silence over reaction. At the bar, a card reader beeped with that unmistakable denial chirp. Chase, one of his old tormentors, forced a laugh as he yanked his credit card back, trying another with a little swagger. The bartender discreetly turned the screen, polite enough not to announce the decline. Still whispers filled the silence like static. "Did you hear Chase's app tanked again? Investors hate public autopsies." Across the room, Tyler pressed the mic, his voice booming. Quick game, then and now, the slideshow rolled, lawyers, entrepreneurs, yoga studio owners, all beaming in glossy success photos. When Elijah's turn came, the screen flashed only a blank gray square photo not provided. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Tyler gave a mock sad shrug. "Guess a few posts just don't upload." More laughter. Elijah leaned back in his chair, calm, steady. They thought their cruelty still had power, But what they didn't know was that the boy had outgrown their hurt. The banquet lights dimmed as Tyler stepped back to the mic, buoyed by the crowd's faint laughter. His smile was wide, but his eyes kept darting whenever the laughter thinned. The games had ended, but the real show, the part he'd been waiting for, was just beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler declared with mock ceremony, "it's time for our awards." For the very best paper certificates with cheap gold borders appeared in his hands as if they meant anything more than a cruel inside joke. Best glow up. Applause. Most international. Awkward laughter. Biggest boss energy. Cheers too loud to sound real. One by one, classmates walked up grinning for the camera, clutching their meaningless certificates. The energy felt brittle like glass about to shatter. Then Tyler raised the final envelope, waving it like a magician about to perform. "Honorable mention," he said, pausing for effect, his voice laced with fake sympathy. "Most likely to still be different." His eyes swept the room before landing on Elijah. "Elijah Moore, are you here?" A cough broke the silence, then a few chuckles, the thin, cutting kind that cuts deeper than words. Every eye turned. Elijah felt his heartbeat steady and slow. He pushed his chair back, the scrape of wood on tile loud in the quiet. He stood, gave a small nod so slight it could have been thanks or a challenge. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice calm, almost soft. The laughter died. Tyler flinched, thrown by the lack of reaction. Elijah sat down, folding the edge of his napkin into a perfect square, as if he had all the time in the world. The message was clear, their mockery no longer worked. Tyler's banter dissolved into an awkward silence like smoke that refused to clear. Around Elijah, conversations tangled back together in hurried whispers, but none of them carried the old edge. "Why did he even come?" a voice muttered. "Content," another joked nervously. "Every circus needs a clown." But a third, softer voice hesitated. "He's calm. It's nothing." Elijah stayed seated, shoulders relaxed, hands folding the napkin again and again until it formed a perfect white square. He looked like a man building order out of chaos, patient, deliberate, untouched by the noise. The room tried to recover. Glasses clinked too loudly as people pretended to toast. Music from rented speakers thumped with forced cheer, but underneath ran a static no beat could hide. Laughter came sharp, fractured, as if trying too hard. From his corner, Elijah watched everything the way programmers watch lines of code scrolling across a black screen, searching for bugs, waiting for the moment it breaks. And the breaks were everywhere, Brooke snapping shrimp tails into half-full glasses, Chase fumbling with his phone as another final notice email flashed Tyler, gripping cue cards tighter every time the audience missed a laugh. Whispers slid past Elijah like shadows. "Did he Uber here? Look at those shoes, they're history." Each insult brushed his back, cold and weightless, unable to pierce. Elijah finished his water, carefully set the glass down, and wiped the condensation ring with his sleeve, calm as ever. Then he looked up, eyes locking on Tyler, the host still clinging to the spotlight. And in that gaze, the balance began to shift. Tyler's voice buzzed through the speakers, too rehearsed, a little too desperate to hold the room. All right. Before we wrap up, let's give a big thank you to tonight's sponsor." "None of this." He gestured at the balloons. The catering and the nearly comatose DJ would be possible without their generous support. He shuffled his cards, his smile faltering when the last card came up blank. For a moment, his words snagged in the air. Well, they've asked to remain anonymous. But hey, applause anyway. Polite claps echoed thin and hollow. Right then, Elijah stood. The scrape of his chair against the tiled floor cut sharper than the DJ's fading beat. Heads turned, curiosity climbing through the crowd. He walked with steady, unhurried steps toward the stage. Tyler's smile twitched the grin of someone realizing the script was slipping from his hands. Elijah climbed the steps, not rushing, not performing, just being. He didn't take the microphone right away. Instead, he stood there, adjusted the edge of his hoodie, and let the silence stretch. The chatter died, glasses stilled midair, the room caught in a breath it didn't know it was holding. At last, his voice, low, calm, unmistakably clear, cut through the quiet. "I want to thank all of you for coming tonight," he said. His gaze swept the hall steady, not angry, simply unshakable. Then he added, "And I want to thank the sponsor of this event, which, as it happens, is me." The room froze. Confusion flickered across faces. Someone near the bar muttered, "Wait, what?" Elijah drew his phone from his pocket. One tap, and the screen behind him went black. The slideshow of high school memories sank into darkness. Then suddenly new images appeared on the projector, headlines, articles, press photos. Orion Technologies raises $40 million in Series B funding, the new face of AI infrastructure. And then larger than life, a Forbes cover, Elijah Moore, in a sharp suit 5 years older yet undeniably him. Gasps shattered the silence. A girl near the front whispered too loudly, "That's him." Another stammered, "No way. Photoshop." But the articles kept rolling, TechCrunch, Bloomberg, Wired, each fact undeniable, each headline driving the truth in deeper. Elijah stood firm, his presence filling the hall without raising his voice. "So when you ask what I do now," he said softly, almost like sharing a secret, something like this. He slipped the phone into his pocket. The screen froze on a single line, estimated net worth $18 million. The silence that followed was no longer the hush of cruelty. It wasn't the pause before laughter. This silence was heavy. It spread through the room into throats and palms, into every arrogant smile now gone. Elijah let it breathe. Then a slight smile curved his lips, not triumphant, not bitter, just final. The kind of smile that says the joke is over and they missed the punchline. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if the projector's light had frozen them, faces half-turned, champagne glasses suspended midair. The laughter that had filled the room minutes earlier now hung like a ghost no one dared summon back. And in that instant the power shifted completely. Tyler still clutched the microphone, but the swagger was gone. His forced smile went dead, leaving something brittle and tight. He cleared his throat, searching for words on cue cards that could no longer save him. "Well, His voice cracked thin as glass. Across the room, Chase squirmed in his seat, tugging at his blazer sleeve, eyes roaming anywhere but Elijah. His phone lit up again on the table, another email flashing final notice, and he flipped it face down in shame. Brooke's champagne glass wobbled in her trembling hand, the fizz too loud in the suffocating quiet. Whispers flickered like sparks through the crowd. "Is that real? Check your phone, man. I told you." He was always different. Screens lit up blue light, etching disbelief into faces as classmates scrambled to search. Confirmation spread like wildfire. Every headline matched, every photo was real. Elijah Moore wasn't a failure. He was untouchable. And then came the shame. It rolled through the hall like a wave crashing over every arrogant smile that had mocked him minutes before. The same mouths that had said "weird loser, nobody" were now shut tight. The same eyes that had rolled when he walked by couldn't meet his gaze. Elijah didn't speak. He didn't need to. He stood at the center of it all, steady calm, letting the silence do the work. From the corner, two classmates forgot how sound carries. "Why did we laugh at him?" one whispered. "Because we thought he'd never become anything," the other answered, voice breaking. "And now, he's everything we said he couldn't be." The truth settled like dust, slow, undeniable, impossible to sweep away. Elijah stepped closer to the edge of the stage, his shadow stretching long across the polished floor. He didn't need a microphone to command attention. His voice carried steady and calm, deeper than any shout. "You see," he began, his gaze sweeping the cold room, "what you called weird was vision. What you called failure was patience. And every time you laughed, every whisper, every smirk became fuel." His tone wasn't angry or resentful. It was almost gentle, like a teacher explaining a truth too obvious to ignore. He paused, letting the silence take hold. Heads lowered. Brooke stared at her half-empty glass, unable to meet his eyes. Chase shifted again, lips parting but no words coming. Tyler stood at the podium, cue cards trembling in his hands, wishing he could rewrite the night. Elijah's eyes softened, but his words sharpened. "The difference between us isn't luck. It isn't even talent. It's what we choose to believe about ourselves and about each other." He let it sink in, each syllable heavier than the suits on their shoulders. The room was utterly still. No laughter, no interruptions. Only the reflection of themselves staring back at them through the man they had once tried to bury. Then Elijah gave a small nod, as if closing a chapter only he had the right to end. He stepped down from the stage, his footsteps echoing louder than applause. The crowd parted without a word. No one dared stop him. No one dared follow. Mockery had turned into a mirror, and they couldn't bear what they saw. Elijah pushed open the banquet doors and stepped into the cool night air. The drizzle had stopped, leaving the pavement slick with streetlight reflections. He pulled his hood tighter, not to hide, but simply because it felt right, because success never needed a spotlight. Behind him, the hall was silent. No applause, no laughter, only the echo of a truth too heavy to ignore. Inside, champagne glasses lay untouched, cue cards abandoned, and every arrogant smile had dissolved into shame. Those who had mocked him would never forget this night, not because he shouted them down, but because he didn't have to. For the first time since high school, Elijah felt free. The label of loser had died in that hall, buried beneath headlines and undeniable proof. More than that, he had stepped onto the very stage built to humiliate him and owned it without having to raise his voice. He walked slowly down the steps, each stride steady, decisive. To anyone passing by, he looked like any other man wearing an old hoodie, sneakers weathered by years of use. And that was exactly the point. His power wasn't in appearances. It lay in resilience, in patience, in vision. Elijah Moore had proven every insult wrong. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. And as the night air wrapped around him, one quiet question lingered, a question he now passed on to the watching world. If it were you, mocked, underestimated, dismissed, would you reveal your success or walk away in silence?